We're in Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 1 through 12. And so I'm going to read the verses out loud, and then we'll pray. For you yourselves know, brothers, that our coming to you was not in vain, but though we had already suffered and been shamefully treated at Philippi, as you know, we had boldness in our God to declare to you with the gospel of God in the midst of much conflict. For our appeal does not spring from error or impurity or any attempt to deceive, but just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not to please man, but to please God, who tests our hearts. For we never came with words of flattery, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed. God is witness. Nor did we seek glory from people, whether from you or from others, though we could have made demands as apostles of Christ. But, Paul says, we were gentle among you, like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. So being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you had become very dear to us. For you remember, brothers, how our labor and toil we worked night and day, that we might not be a burden to any of you. While we proclaim to you the gospel of God, you are witnesses, and God also, how holy and righteous and blameless was our conduct toward you believers. For you know how, like a father with his children, we exhorted each one of you and encouraged you and charged you to walk in a manner worthy of God, who calls you into his own kingdom and glory. These are the words of the Lord. Let's pray. Holy Spirit, we ask you to make your word known to us today. Lord, I just thank you so much for what you're doing here at our church and our lives. Lord, would you bless this time? In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So I want to start off. The sermon today is called The Way You Came In. I know I'm ending that with a preposition, and so for some of you word freaks out there saying, you never end a sentence in a preposition. I know I'm doing it. Last week we talked about a woman that was a lighthouse keeper for years and saved many lives. This week I want you to look at that ship right there. There was once a ship that went on a week-long cruise, and they were at the end of the voyage, and there was a big celebration dinner in the stateroom. Speeches were being made. The captain speaks, the crew speaks, the guests speak. And sitting at the head of the table is a 70-year-old man. And he's red-faced, he's embarrassed, trying to handle all the praise being poured out on him. Because earlier that morning, a young woman had fallen overboard. Cold water, it was dark water, and within seconds, as you would think, and some of you, maybe you old souls, and when you get to be 70, you would do the same thing. Within seconds, this elderly man was in the water next to her. Where are those men these days, right? He saved your life. He was the hero of the ship. And finally, it was his turn to speak. The whole dining room became incredibly quiet. He walks up to the little microphone and he says, and I quote, "I just want to know one thing. Who pushed me?" See, that's my relationship to courage. Most of the time, when I think of being a courageous person, I do not want to know what courage is. I want to know who pushed me. I want to know what it is in me because I'm not a courageous person. Because courage is such a weird word. It sounds like something you either have or you don't. Kind of like height. I don't have height. Or eye color. And if you are anything like me, you spent most of your life thinking, yeah, I probably don't have much of that in me. The series that we're in right now is called The Watcher's Lantern, and this is week 2 in a 9-week series, which is The Watcher's Lantern between the darkness and the day. And we're walking through 2 letters that Paul wrote to a very young church in Thessalonica. They were new in faith, facing real trouble, real suffering, real confusion about where God was going with their lives. And Paul writes to them, not from a distance, but from a deep love, to tell them how to stand in the dark and how to wait for the dawn. See, we are not people of the night. We are children of the day. The lantern is lit. It was never ours to extinguish it. It was ours to hold. And this week, the question is simple. How did the lantern get to you in the first place? How did the gospel, how did that light come to you in the first place? Who carried it, and how do you carry it next? Okay, I want to tell you another story. And for you, you're like, Josh, what's the stories? Well, do you guys remember this Disney classic right here? Tale as old as time. Thank you. And then we'll get to the text. In 1991, this was here, and stay with me. There's a moment about halfway through that movie, and we see this, that Belle has had enough of being with the Beast. The Beast has been screaming at her, slamming the door, stomping through the castle, demanding her love, and she finally gets out. She bolts, she leaves. Do you remember that part? She saddles up Philippe, the horse, the French horse, I don't know, Philippe, and rides out towards the snow. But what happens when she rides out? The wolves find her in the woods, right? And a whole pack of them, and she cannot get away. Actually, I rewatched that part, and she actually gets a hit in. I don't know if you saw her with a stick. I was like, dang, Belle. And just before the wolves close in, what happens? The beast shows up. Right? Like there's this like cool time. And so like for me watching this, I know all the girls like, you know, growing up, they're like, oh, Belle, she's so smart. It's so great. Not very smart, went into the snow without any protection or anything like that. And so what do we hear is we have the Beast come out and protect her. And I love this image. I loved this image right here of him, this thing that would hurt her, was angry towards her, frustrated, trying to demand love, without him knowing this is where the whole turn starts happening in the story. This is when the curse starts getting lifted. In this moment. Right when that happens, he doesn't give her a lecture for running. He doesn't give a speech about loyalty. He does not call down from the balcony and say, how's it doing down there? He puts his body between her and the wolves. Between her body and the teeth. He gets bitten up. He gets torn up. He takes the wound that was coming for her. And he collapses in the snow. And then there's a thing that most people miss in the story, that she helps bring up this giant beast onto the back of this horse, Philippe. Suspend disbelief, it is a cartoon. You're like, where was that strength before? But watch what Belle does after that. For the first time in the whole movie, it is at that moment she comes close. She lifts him onto the horse, a Herculean task. She takes him back to the castle. She kneels next to him, and with a wet cloth, she tends to his wounds. Do you remember that part? Where she gets close to his arms and he's like yelling at her, and he growls at her and she yells back and says, hold still. And he stops fighting her and she cleans him up. The narrator at the front of that movie says that this is a tale as old as time. And I want to tell you what I believe is the oldest part of that tale. The oldest part is this, that the beast could not scare Belle into loving him. He could not demand her into loving him. He could not impress her into loving him from across the castle. The only thing that ever changed her, the only thing that ever started to break the curse on the whole house was the moment he took the wound for her. Love did not come through power or through fear or through him trying to scare her into love. Love came with and through scars, through wounds. And I love the song because right after that moment, it goes into the song, and having a daughter that grew up watching the show, and I could not wait to watch the show with her. There's that song, and I want you to just hear the song's lyrics. It says, "There's something sweet and almost kind, but he was mean and he was coarse and unrefined. And now he's dear and so unsure. I wonder why I didn't see it there before. She glanced away," he says. "She glanced this way, I thought I saw, and when we touched, she didn't shudder at my paw. No, it can't be, I'll just ignore, but then she's never looked at me that way before." Right? It's this beautiful thing in this moment to where people come close because people don't care about how much you know or what you can do or all this gospel presentation that you have ever experienced when it comes to Christianity. Unless people know that you care, they'll never let you come close. See, everyone, this is where the Apostle Paul knew something about that. He wrote a letter to a church that he loved, and he did not say, "You remember what I said? Do you remember that sermon I said?" Most of you will never remember sermons that I give. You will remember the conversations we had, the coffee we had, but the times that we went to a men's group together or whatever. Like, I wish you would. I wish I could preach a sermon so good that you're like, I will never forget that sermon. But Paul knows that. He says, you don't remember what we said to you. He said, you remember how we came to you. You remember how we came. Because here's the thing. We live in an age where we prefer distance. We like platform over presence. We like influence over intimacy. We like content over contact. We like announcement from far away instead of accompaniment. We would rather post that we love Jesus than actually carry it into a live and into a conversation. We would rather broadcast it in some way than actually bring it. We would rather say it into a phone than say it across a table. See, the gospel does not come that way. The gospel comes in a certain way. The gospel came close. People know that you're a Christian. People know what you believe. But it is only until you come in a certain way to where you actually get a certain form of spiritual and relational equity to where people are ready to hear the gospel. And this is what Paul is saying to the Thessalonians. Remember how we came. Here's what I want you to see today. 3 things Paul says about how the gospel came to Thessalonica. 3 things. And I feel like if you let them into your heart, if you receive this today, they will change how you talk with your kids this week. They will change how you show up for friends that are actually going through something this week. They will change how you carry the name of Jesus, just of what we sang, into the city around us. So 3 things. 1, the gospel came with courage. 2, the gospel came with closeness. And then 3, the gospel came with a calling. So let's get into the text. So the first thing that we're going to look at today is the gospel came with courage. The gospel came with courage. Let's look at verse 1. For you yourselves know, brothers, that our coming to you was not in vain. But though we had already suffered and been shamefully treated at Philippi, as you know, we have boldness in our God to declare to you the gospel of God in the midst of much conflict. See, Thessalonica was a big city, 200,000 people. It was a Macedonian port, and it was sitting on this imperial highway that ran east to west across the whole empire. There was money, traffic, sailors, soldiers, rival saviors at every corner. Roman propaganda was everywhere, carved on monuments, printed on coins. The empire slogan was peace and security. Caesar was Lord. The emperor was divine. And there was a local cult, as I talked about last week, the cult of Tiberius, that already had a story about a martyred hero coming back from the dead. Half of what Paul wanted to say, the culture had already been preempted. The pump was already primed and sold back to itself. It was a crowded spiritual marketplace. And Paul walks in from Philippi, where he had just been beaten, humiliated, thrown into prison, and in the end asked politely just to leave the town. Now he arrives to Thessalonica with bruises, and still these bruises that haven't even been healed yet. And he opens his mouth and he preaches Jesus. The word Paul uses in verse 2, which is panrema, I'm not going to tell you how to spell that, literally means all speech, all saying. The Greeks used it for the right of a free citizen to speak openly in a public assembly. The disciples used the same word in Acts 4 after they had been threatened. Lord, grant your servants to continue to speak your word with all boldness. All panrema. See, panrema is not loudness. It's not a person with a bullhorn yelling outside. It's not somebody that's wearing, I'm thinking like the old-time barrels, and they're walking around saying the end is near. It's not a personality. What this word means, panrema means, is courage under threat. Lord, allow us to speak this thing because we know that we are being threatened and we could die for speaking this thing openly. It is a refusal to go silent because silence would be cheaper. See, most of us do not think of ourselves scared to talk about Jesus. We think of ourselves as just being polite people. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about religion. We're just being polite. Respectful. What we don't want to do is we don't want to push people away. And I want to just say this kind of lovingly, but some of you guys might not like it, so I'm sorry. There is a version of not pushing people away that is actually fear wearing the clothes of virtue. I'm just not trying to push people. Honestly, what you're really doing is you're actually afraid, and you're using that as a virtue, and it's not a virtue, it's a vice. How is the gospel supposed to get out? I understand this, and this is most of my sermon of what St. Augustine said is, as he says, preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words. I get that, and that's what I'm talking about, is to come in and be in a way of how you do it. But also, you have to speak up. Paul had every reason to keep his mouth shut. He had the bruises to prove it. He had enemies. He had been run out of the last town. And if anyone had a pass to not have to open up his mouth again after being in imprisonment, it was Paul. But he kept talking. See, pain did not shut him up. Pain loosened his mouth, and he spoke even more boldly. G.K. Chesterton has this great quote where he says this: courage is almost a contradiction in terms. It means a strong desire to live, taking the form of the readiness to die. He must desire life like water, yet drink death like wine. And courage, this contradiction that G.K. Chesterton says, it is wanting life so badly that you are willing to risk losing it. Desire life like water, drink death like wine. That is what Paul did on the road from Philippi to Thessalonica. He did not stop caring about his life. He cared about his life so much that he was experiencing the presence of God in a real life that he wanted to not just be so heavenly minded that he was no earthly good, but some people are so heavenly minded that they want to bring heaven to earth. Paul didn't stop caring about his life. He cared about it so much that he was willing to spend his life for people who had not yet heard the gospel. Right now, I know God is bringing people to your mind that you aren't courageous about, and it's probably like a family member that knows you, and they're like, I haven't seen you enough I haven't seen the change yet in your life. Maybe it's a coworker that you've become and started following Jesus, and you're like, I don't know if I can actually speak up. Here's the thing. The only person that God is going to be able to use in their life is not me. They're not here. You haven't brought them here yet. It's you. It's your conduct. It's your life. And Paul was willing to spend his life. See, Paul did not have a death wish. He had a life wish so deep, it will walk through death to keep going through. So, I want to slow down a little bit here. Some of you are in a season of deep restlessness. I've been talking to much of you, trying to figure out your life, trying to figure out your job, trying to figure out who to build this life with. And you keep asking God for certainty before you move, right? You just don't know what you're called to do next. And you keep asking God, and he's kind of waiting for you to take a step of courage and of faith. See, courage is not certainty. Courage is the willingness to move without it. Do you have the courage to move forward even when you're not certain? You will have to make a decision before you feel ready. You have to trust the process. You need to trust the God who is already ahead of you. You can trust an unknown future to a known God. You might not have certainty. But then there's some of you today, and to the ones who are content, some of you are the opposite of this restlessness. Your life is not restless at all. Your life is actually pretty comfortable. And God is glad that you are arcade, if you were wondering before. Contentment is a gift. It says that contentment with godliness is great gain. But God is calling you into something different today, and I want to speak that to you right now. God is calling you into a holy discontentment. A holy discontentment, because what is in your hand right now? What talents, what connections, what relationships? You were not given the deck of cards that God has given to you right now for you just to hold. You were given that deck of cards so that for such a time as this, you would spend them in gospel conversations, that you would actually use them for the furtherance of God's kingdom. What is in your hand? I know you're like, Josh, I'm content. I'm finally content in my life. And I am praying now for a holy discontentment, that you would not be comfortable. And that was how Jesus came. He would always comfort the afflicted, and then he would afflict the comfortable. He would say, come on, guys. You have been given so much, and because you have been blessed so much, your blessings were never supposed to terminate on you. Your blessings were supposed to bubble up, and you were supposed to, you being blessed, you were blessed to become a blessing to others. See, I believe that God is calling you to more. Not to be louder about your faith, not to be louder about how you live through your life, but more. So I want you to think about the person that you've been avoiding, the friend you will not follow up with because the last conversation went awkward. Who's ever had that? Like you wanted to talk to them about Jesus and it just did not land. It was not the right time, and you're afraid to reach out to them again. God might be calling you right now to look up that family member that wrote you off and you tried once, but maybe God is prompting you, maybe talk to them again. And, that family member that wrote you off after you tried and they blew up on you, that polite distance that you've given them, that is not holiness. That is a small version of trying to protect your life. And the gospel does not come from safety. The gospel came to you because Jesus did not protect his safety. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is love that has decided to spend itself. The brave people of Christianity do not clutch. The brave pour. They pour out. See, the brave do not protect their lives. They pour their lives out. Today, I would ask you to pour your life out to the people that need to hear the gospel the most, the people that are in proximity to you. See, Paul came with courage, but courage alone is not enough. You can be bold and still be wrong about how you come in. You can be brave and still be manipulative, trying to force people into Christianity. A lot of the loudest voices about Jesus on the internet right now are bold ones. And Paul says, no. Watch how I came in through humility. Watch how I came in through kindness and gentleness, because the way the gospel comes matters as much as the fact that the gospel comes at all. So my second point is this, is the gospel came with closeness. Let's look at verse 3. For our appeal does not spring from error or impurity or an attempt to deceive, but just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak not to please man, but to please God who tests our hearts. For we never came with words of flattery, as you know, nor with pretext for greed. God is witness, nor did we, I feel like when he says God is witness, it's like the Gen Z term, like on God, or whatever they say. Right? They say that, right? Nor do we seek glory from people, whether from you or from others, though we could have made demands as apostles of Christ, but we were gentle among you, like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. So, being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel. I love this part. It is one of the sweetest, like honey. It's one of the sweetest things that a pastor could ever say about his love for a church. Listen, he says, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you had become very dear to us. He says, for you remember, brothers, our labor and toil. We worked night and day that we might not be a burden to any of you while we proclaim to you the gospel of God. You are our witnesses, and God also, how holy and righteous and blameless was our conduct toward you believers. So, what he was not and what he was, Paul lists 7 nots in that verse. You can count them with me in verses 3 through 6. Not from error, not from impurity, not deceit, not to please man, not with flattery, not as a pretext for greed, not seeking glory from people. 7 counterfeits. And why does he have to list them? Because in the ancient world, there was known a type of speaker or a type of job that you could do. And it's one of those weird things, because I don't want to burn any bridges and burn people. And, we live in a time of platforms and podcasts and all these things. But there was a way to do content creation with the gospel. Because it was a new philosophy, it was a new spirituality, it was a new type of religion, and people would pay good money to listen to it. Just like you guys listen to podcasts, and then you hear the ads for AG1, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're just doing it out of the goodness of our hearts, giving us all this content for free. Just like in the same way, people would want to spend their days listening to a new view. And Paul says there was an ancient traveling type person that could make money this way. A sophist for hire. A guy would come into town, he would draw crowds and say impressive things. He would get honor, he would get paid, and he would move on to the next city. He was a circuit preacher, and he had a Patreon. So, Paul says, I'm not that guy. I do not need your approval. I don't need your money. I don't need your applause. In verse 4, he uses a word which is dokimizo, which is tested, examined, and approved. Paul is saying, I have already passed the test. Not yours, God's test. His. And the moment you start living for an audience's approval, you will reshape the gospel to keep it. Many of you try to keep the gospel in a safe, tame way, and God is saying it's not safe. We have domesticated Aslan into a house cat. We have taken this thing that can be offensive, And I'm not saying go into it and offend people. That is not what I'm saying. But I am saying that this thing, it cuts to the heart because it's in truth. You will reshape the gospel to keep people's approval. You will soften what they don't like. You will inflate what they do. You will curate yourself into a performance, and you will be performing people. And the gospel will be reduced to a brand. And brands can't save anyone. So I want to tell you a really quick story. Before Shay and I got married, I used to have a pretty ridiculously big mustache. And I was pretty proud of it. It was a part of my identity. And I used to go over here to the Gypsy Den. And at the Gypsy Den, before work, we'd go in the morning, me and my friend, and we'd have a cup of coffee, and I would get a blueberry bagel with cream cheese. Here's the problem with a mustache and cream cheese. They do not work well together. The cream cheese gets everywhere, and you cannot see it. It is literally right under your nose. Literally right under your nose. And you walk around all day, and you have no idea. Now, here's the thing. This happened multiple occasions, but people saw me with just a glob of cream cheese on my stupid mustache. And they wouldn't say a thing. I would catch it hours later in a bathroom mirror and stand there, and I would look at myself and I'd be like, how long has this been here? And believe me, I was a single guy trying to date. It was before Shay, so I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me? And Rick, who led worship, his son was the one eating breakfast with me and never would tell me. How long has that thing been there? Who saw? Who didn't tell me? And here's the question. The question is not, did it happen? The question is, who was close enough and kind enough to tell me? Because the friend across the room who sees it and doesn't say anything, that is not a friend. Stephen did tell me, okay? That's why I had him close. He'd be like, Josh, face, okay. But a friend who leans in, low voice, and says, hey man, you got something, right? That friend can change my whole day and a little bit of my confidence. Because the way they said it made me glad to know. Paul is describing the kind of person who does that with your whole life. Verse 7, but we were gentle among you like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. Watch what Paul just did. See, this scar-tissued apostle, the one who just walked into Thessalonica fresh off a beating, became someone that was as bold as a lion, unafraid of a pagan empire. He chooses what as his archetype? A lion? No. A nursing mother as his self-portrait. The Greek word is trophos. A nursing mother does not just instruct. She does not just deliver content. She nourishes from her own body. Whatever she has, she gives. And the softest word in the New Testament, in verse 8, being affectionately desirous of you. This soft, beautiful word, it means to long for, to ache. It is family language. It is lover language. Parents use it about their children. Friends use it about their friends they haven't seen in years. You know, when you see those people and you're like, oh, my heart aches that it's been so long since we've seen you. And Paul uses it here for people he had known only for 6 months. Everworld Church, can we become a church that within 6 months we have hearts like that towards each other? And in this sentence, Paul says, the one I would, and this sentence that is so good that I already took a second to talk about it, was, and I would put it in, if I had a pastor's office, in my own pastor's office, every kitchen table, or not kitchen table, but in a kitchen with a family like the old ones, like in my house we'll serve the Lord. Like this is what I would like. Every small group leaders like Bible, what I would love is this verse put in. 1 Thessalonians 2:8. We were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves. because you had become very dear to us. Our own selves. That word in the Greek is psychos, which means souls, lives, our very selves. Not just a message the gospel is being preached. It's us. It's who we are. Our very selves. Now, Henri Nouwen says this great quote in one of his writings in the name of Jesus. He says this: laying down your life means making your own faith and doubt, hope and despair, joy and sadness, courage and fear available to others as a way of getting in touch with the Lord of life. Laying your life down for your friends. See, Paul, when he says our own selves, this is what psyche means, or psychos means. He says your faith and your doubt, your hope and your despair, your joy and your sadness, your courage and your fear, all of it available to somebody. See, I'm not courageous if a dog comes up to me and starts, today me and Che were chasing around a dog that was in our neighborhood and it didn't have a leash and we were afraid for it. And I go out and I try to, jump out and get the dog and the dog just bolts. Like, the only reason why I have courage is because I don't want it to hurt my family. Right? This is what Chesterton says. He says, the reason why people go to war is not because they hate the enemy in front of them, it's because they love the people behind them. Courage is about laying down your life for somebody else and making it available to somebody. Not curated, not polished, not just the highlight reel of Christian life. Your whole interior life offered up as a way for another person to find Jesus. That is what Paul gave the Thessalonians. Not a sermon, a self. A person, actual blood, actual heart, actual life. See, you do not become dear at a distance. You become dear through presence. When we made this stage and we were trying to figure it out and draw it out, Tyler and John were saying to me, how tall do you want to be? Because if we made this a little bit bigger, I would be a lot taller. So we decided that Josh wants to be 6'2", so you can do the math yourself. But what I've noticed is as churches get bigger, the platforms start to raise. That there's little about being able to see the face and be close in proximity to others. And here's the thing, I don't want to get higher up. I don't want to be that. I've seen this with a lot of people in ministry, and maybe even you, as you grow in leadership or whatever, you start kind of getting the shine over you that you're not, that you're more than human or whatever it is, and it always just ends in infamy. Fame always goes up, and then it turns into infamy. And what Paul says is, this is not the heart. This is not what you preach the gospel for. It is so that you can become dear to the congregation, not only dear to the congregation, it's dear to other believers through presence. Keller says this. He says, you give your heart away, you keep your head. Power changes people from the outside in. Influence changes people from the inside out. And the only condition under which people change from the inside out is if they are getting their teaching from somebody they know loves them. This is heart. This is heart. This is head. This is Tim Keller saying, give your heart away, keep your head. Love them with everything you have. Tell them the truth with everything you know. Do not give away one and keep the other. That is what Paul did. He gave his heart away, and the Thessalonians knew it. He did not stay emotionally safe. He did not keep a coat of Teflon between him and them. His joy got bound up with their joy. If they were okay, he was okay. If they were not okay, he was not okay either. And he kept his head. He told them the truth. He did not flatter them to keep them around. It was heart and it was head theology. One more story, and I know that you're like, done with stories, Josh. No, this week, this is what my heart and head kind of looked like. I just got an old truck, a used truck, but it's new to me. And my check engine light came on. And the check engine light is basically the ultimate bad news button. At least it has been in my experience with it. Because it could be nothing. Or it could be $3,000. Like, we don't know what that check engine light means. We have no idea. So I took it over to my buddy Jesse's mechanic shop. He's a mechanic. And he said that he would run a quick diagnostic on it. And minutes later, he walked over with me. And like, here's the thing with him. He was like kind of busy and whatever. And he's a real straight shooter. It's like, it's kind of refreshing because when you go to like some mechanics, they kind of wheel and deal you, but he just is straight shooter. But he walks over to me with a super serious face. He leans in to tell me the brutal truth of what the problem is. And you know what he says? Josh, have you gone to a gas station lately? Now I'm bracing. Now I'm freaking out. Now I'm thinking, did I put diesel in to my car? Did I put the wrong fuel in? Did I just ruin my engine? And he says, no. You just need to tighten your gas cap. It's loose. I'm like, what? Come on, Toyota. Like, why do you like give people like little heart attacks over the, like, just all I had to do is a 30-second twist. Like, it was nothing. But I liked what Jesse did. He didn't roll his eyes. He used humor. And he didn't make me feel stupid because I got to feel stupid because I told people about it at a birthday party later that day. But what I loved about it is he told me the truth with humor. He came close in humility. And he told me the brutal truth. And thankfully, that brutal truth wasn't $3,000. And he told it in a way that made me laugh instead of feel ashamed. That is heart and head. Truth in a voice that does not humiliate. Nearness that doesn't try to shame. That is exactly what Paul is describing. And then it says in verse 9, "For you remember, brothers, our labor and toil we worked night and day, that we might not be a burden to any of you." See, Paul, when he was at Thessalonica, he had a job. He was a tent maker. He worked with his hands while he preached. So he would not owe anybody anything. He wanted the only ask in the room that he wanted to be was for asking them to follow after Jesus. This is the kind of ministry that is very expensive. Time, sleep, margin, bandwidth, and actual money. And Paul says, we paid for ourselves night and day. You are productive, but you are not ordered. Paul worked night and day, but he was not driven. He was rooted. He was ordered. He was faithful to a calling, not to his own momentum. God is inviting some of us today into healthy rhythms. Not more output, less noise. More presence with your family, with your friend group, with the people you have been given to lead, given to love. Because you cannot deliver a gospel of nearness if your life is too scattered to be near anyone. So, we are in a season in the American church where there are a lot of loud voices. And whoever has the loudest voice actually wins. And they have given their heads away and they have kept their hearts. They will tell you the truth. They do not actually love you. And people can feel it through their reels. Like, some of you guys are getting this truth from me. You're like, man, Josh, I just wish you would just give me the truth. Like this pastor that is just telling me the truth, but he doesn't know your life. I would love to give you the truth of what you really need to do, but guess what? I'm in your life. And I have to be a person that comes to you in a way that is loving and in humility, because maybe you won't listen to me. I'm always amazed. I'm like, when somebody will say, like, send me a cool clip of a pastor, I'm like, I was saying that 3 weeks ago. But you'll listen to truth from this guy over here because he's not in your life. Some of you feel the exact same way.
Some of you are like, man, like I told this person this, but Josh spoke, and when he preached, they listened then, and when he listened then, man, like what's the deal here? If Josh only knew the proximity. No, here's what I'm asking you to do today. Some people will tell you the truth, but they don't actually love you. And people can feel it. They feel it from a stage, they feel it from their phones, and there is another group, often wounded, often well-meaning, who have given their hearts away, but they have kept their heads, their wits about them. They will love you, but they will not tell you the truth. And people feel that too. Paul says, no, both are needed, head and heart, truth and love at the same time to the same people with your whole life, given not just the gospel, but your whole self. See, that is the gospel of nearness. It's not a broadcast. It's a bringing in. So, you cannot deliver a gospel of nearness with a life of distance. You cannot deliver a gospel of nearness with a life of distance. So, Paul came with courage, and he came with closeness, but nearness for its own sake is not enough either. You can love someone close and still love them nowhere. Paul is not just loving these people, he is aiming them somewhere. He has a goal, he has a calling, and so do we. So let's look at the last verse, and the gospel came with a calling. So, for you know how, like a father with his children, we exhorted each one of you and encouraged you and charged you to walk in a manner worthy of God, who calls you into his own kingdom and glory. He then changes his image to a nursing mother to a loving father. Paul switches the metaphor in verse 7. In verse 7, he's a nursing mother. In verse 11, he is a father. Same apostle, two images, both are needed. A house without tenderness becomes a boot camp. A house without direction becomes a daycare. You've experienced both, and we have to become people that actually have the tenderness and lovingness of a nursing mother, but also the strength of a father. There are three verbs in verse 11. He says, exhort, encourage, and charge. To exhort means to call alongside, to pull somebody forward into what they are meant to be. A father at the sideline waving their kid to get a goal, or for me, coaching a kid that got a goal. Get up, keep on going, keep on running, I see you. Some of you guys need to be that way within your relationships. Secondly, to encourage. That word, I love this word encourage that is used. It's literally this idea, this image, to put backbone back into someone who is losing it. That somebody's backbone is becoming deteriorated, and you are almost getting another back, and you are actually putting your own into them and saying, I'm going to deposit into you courage that you do not have, but I have for you. It's not a pep talk, it's presence. Standing next to somebody, lending them some of your nervous system that they no longer have. And then the third thing that he does is he gives them a charge. I love this. A solemn, weighty word. You know that does something to you when a father gives you, maybe not a long speech, but just one word. I get it, son. I've been there. Oh, sweetheart, if you need anything, you know Dad's always here for you. This is the Father sitting down and saying, I want you to remember who you are. I want you to remember whose you are. Paul does not come close so they will need him forever. He comes close so what? So that they might walk with God. What a father does, what a mother does, is nurtures and loves and gives that kid a sense of, hey, you can always be in home. What the father's job is not only to exhort and encourage, but to charge and say, son, daughter, I'm going to instill into you home that even if you ever leave this place, you will always be at home. Do you see why God has made us so different? And so we need to see both of these images. Paul does not come close so that they become dependent on him. He comes close because he says, I want you to know the ultimate Father, which is God. I want you to be able to walk. He aims their attention up. He aims them out. John Tyson says this. He says, honor sees who someone can become, not only where someone has come from. When I look at you guys, I don't want to make you guys think that you can't come close to me because I will judge you by what you have done. I look at you and I say, man, I see what God is doing in you and who God is making you and who he wants you to become. Paul did that. He did not look at the Thessalonians as ex-pagans. He didn't look at them as ex-pagans. He did not look at the Thessalonians like this way. He saw them as sons and daughters walking worthy of God who called them. He called them what they would become before they already were there. That is what a father does in the gospel. And here is what I want you to hear. If you are a young professional today and you have been listening to this Watcher's Lantern series, and you're like, how do I get started? How do I experience it? It's a series about being faithful, how to remain, how to keep going in what God has already called you to. If you're a parent today, I just want you to say and let you just know this. I see you, and so does the gospel. And the gospel is saying you need to show up within the church to show what a mother is like and show what a father is like. That the gospel isn't you just giving them good advice on their dating life. It is you actually coming to them and being desirous and affectionate with them and loving them where they are and nourishing them, but also giving them exhortation, also giving them encouragement, also giving them a charge. That the gospel wants to preach not just in word, but also in power and in deed. So I want you to know this. I want your faithfulness right now might not be spectacular. It might be a lot of meals, a lot of laundry for the parents, a lot of bedtime prayers. That is the gospel coming into your household. Do not underestimate what God is doing in your life as a mother or father. Now, if you're a baby boomer in our wonderful church, you have spent a lifetime building things. Some of us literally building things. You have spent, and right now you're trying to figure out how to keep your body going and how to spend what is left. Let me tell you something. The deck of cards that are in your hand is more valuable now than it has ever been before. You are the fathers, and some of you grandfathers, and you have to, please, for the love of God, you older men, please pass down your spiritual DNA to younger men. Allow it to be a deposit within them. Encourage them. Exhort them. Give them a charge. For you women, you older women, you go, oh my gosh, I don't have kids in the house anymore. And now even the grandkids are doing stuff. I'm telling you, I'm begging you, come stand behind some of these younger women, some of these younger mothers, and tell them I would kill to be back in your shoes again and help them out. What has God given you? The relationships you carry, the wisdoms you have paid for, the people who still look up to you. God is not done with you. He is aiming you at Monday. So, you are someone who has found God maybe this week and you have come close. See, you did not climb a mountain. You did not figure it out. You did not earn his attention. God came to you. He gave you not only the gospel, he gave himself. And that changes who you are. So, I want to finish with this. We don't come near so people will depend on us. We come near so they can walk with God. This week, we are bringing the gospel of God through our lives, but not only through our lives, but we are not creating people to become dependent on our discipling. We want them to become disciples making disciples who make disciples. We want to have generational life. So God did not save you from a balcony. Jesus came from heaven. He walked into our lives. He came from heaven to earth, and he showed up. He moved into the neighborhood. So, the gospel isn't meant to be carried into people's lives. The gospel is meant to be carried into people's lives, not announced from a distance, come near. One more story about my mustache. You're like, I'm tired of this mustache. I can feel Shay being like, why are you doing this? For the first 5 years of my life, or not my life, the first 5 years of my life, I had a mustache. For the first 5 years of our marriage, Shay had never seen my upper lip. I always had that mustache. And it came the time for me to shave it. And one of the things that was a trend at the time was when parents would shave their face and then go see their little kids. And Lola was around at like 1 at the time. She was pretty young, 8 months, 1. And we didn't want her to be like, who is this man in my house with the same voice as dad? You know, like we didn't want that. And I don't know if you remember this. And it's kind of funny because Tyler shaved everything this week and everybody's like, oh, Tyler, he's a new person. But here's the thing. One of the things that I wanted to do that I didn't want to happen to Lola is her to be afraid. So one way that you can do it is this, is you let them shave your mustache as a little kid. Because when they see it come off, they know it's you. Their mind isn't jolted, but they come close. Some of you think that you can share the gospel and minister to people once you have things all together. But sometimes that scares them. Your face is fully shaved to them. For your women, you're like, I don't know what that's like. But you come up to them, and they can see the change, and it's almost too drastic where they're like, oh my gosh, like you're a Jesus freak. Are you in a cult? Like, I hope I don't see you in a Netflix documentary soon. Like, you know. But what I would ask for you to do today is invite unbelievers, and invite anyone, to see the change as you're going through it, through closeness. Not because you have it all together, but they can start seeing the change and they go, oh my gosh, if they can change, so can I. Let's pray. Please come, Holy Spirit. We thank you for this